I am Bo. I am Tiimo's Inclusion and Belonging Lead. So excited to be here with you today. Couple of housekeeping things. If you want to ask questions throughout, you can do so in the chat, but even better is using the the question function, the Q&A at the bottom. That is going to allow Gina to see the questions later during the Q&A section. And it allows other folks to upvote your question, all that good stuff. So use that Q&A function as much as you want to. And yeah, other than that, I'm just going to introduce Gina. Gina here is a renowned ADHD leadership coach who's dedicated to supporting ADHD leaders like yourself. Just as a disclaimer off the top, this is not only going to be helpful for ADHD leaders. So wherever you are at in your career, you can find some value from the wisdom that Gina is going to share today. But yeah, she is dedicated to helping folks break free from burnout and helping leaders fall in love with their professional lives again. So really excited to have you. Hi, Gina. I'll pass it on to you now, and then stick around till the end for a little discount code and a little info on what's happening at Tiimo. Alrighty, Gina, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Bo. Thank you for the introduction. And hey, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be talking about how to unlock an ADHD-aligned framework to break the procrastination cycle, to get some work done, and also to do that without continuing to burn out. My name is Gina, and I'm an ADHD coach and the founder of Kind2, and we are here, as Bo said, to change the lives of 10,000 ADHD brains, to break free from overwhelm and to create their version of success in and also out of the workplace. Before we get into the framework, I've got a couple of questions for you, which should come up on a poll on the screen. If not, add your answers into the chat. Question number one is I lost the question. Give me 2 seconds. That's the thing with Zoom, sometimes things come up all over the place. So, what percentage of adults with ADHD experience burnout symptoms? And this is according to ADA, which are the Attention Deficit Disorder Association. So we've got 3 answers. We've got 10%, 93%, and 50%. And I think I can just close that. Amazing. So pop your answer on now. 93%. So according to ADA, 93% of people with ADHD experience some level of burnout symptoms. And question number 2 is, according to the World Health Organization, how many days do you think are, in inverted commas, lost for somebody with ADHD each year? So again, we've got 3 possible answers. We've got 1 day, 11 days, or 22 days. So yeah, how many days do you think are quote unquote lost in productivity for someone with ADHD each year? So as you said, 22. For me, it was definitely more than 22 before I understood a little bit more about my brain and found some tools and techniques to really support me in my own productivity journey. So yeah, 22 days. And then the third question, the high prevalence of burnout and loss of productivity for ADHD brains often causes distress, frustration, overwhelm. And this is multiple choice, so you can pick 1, 2, 3, or none of them, depending on what you want to choose. So it's not just the lost days and burnout symptoms. The high prevalence of burnout and loss of productivity for ADHD brains often causes distress, frustration, overwhelm, or all 3. All 3 are often the case. And on top of this, our progression is often hindered. Being in the workplace is hard. I've been there, and I was thinking about it earlier. I've been working for nearly 20 years. That's 2 decades. I've been based in the UK, and pretty much all of this was before I'd even considered I had ADHD. And I've seen it. I've been there more times than I can count, but there is another way. Leadership is hard at the best of times, and I believe in the workplace we all have some form of leadership in our roles. And having ADHD often amplifies the challenges that leadership can bring. The day-to-day demands of a leader can often feel never-ending. There's always something new, there's always something more, a new challenge, a new problem, a new project. And all of these require prioritization, they require planning, and they also are generally wrapped up in some kind of process that was set up by the company. When we add ADHD into the mix, these struggles amplify. And ADHD leaders, particularly when we're burned out, can encounter challenges in prioritization due to the intersection of ADHD traits and leadership or managerial demands. When we add overwhelm, feelings of rejection, and a lack of motivation to the already intense demands of a management role or a leadership role, it can feel impossible. Meaning many ADHD brains are stuck in this ADHD burnout cycle. And some of the signs that you're stuck in the ADHD burnout cycle are decision fatigue, feeling like you're on 1% battery, and unusually irritable, anxious, or apathetic. This is related specifically to the ADHD burnout cycle. There can also be symptoms of other things, but I'm going to talk specifically today about the ADHD burnout cycle. In this ADHD aligned workshop, I'm going to show you how to tap into your ADHD-based nervous system so that you can beat procrastination and fall in love with your role again. This concept of an interest-based nervous system was introduced by Dr. William Dodson. He explains that a person with an interest-based nervous system must be personally interested, challenged, find the thing that they're doing novel or urgent, which brings that right now or nothing happens kind of feeling. Or procrastination can set in. I'm smiling because it's definitely happened to me multiple times before I created a framework that then enabled me to stop or limit that procrastination. Some people are able to determine what's important and get motivated to do it, even if the thing that they're doing doesn't interest them, which doesn't always work for ADHD brains. An importance-based nervous system is motivated by tasks that are classified as important, and that might be tied to rewards or consequences, and there needs to be a sense of duty or societal expectation, and then people with an importance-based nervous system are more responsive to external cues, for example, to avoid nagging. Or we have the interest-based interest. External consequences like nagging are much less motivated. So this is running multi-million here also international. Of this, everything, all of work been made redundant. I've times fast forward to today. I've recovered and I run a successful business and I travel a lot and I've learned to work with my brain. I've worked with people at companies like the Financial Times, who are a large news agency. I've worked with Sainsbury's and John Lewis. They are both UK-based retailers. I've worked at the National Health Service. I've worked at Virgin Media O2, who are a large telecoms company, 10x Banking, B2B banking platforms, as well as smaller startups and founders, and lots of businesses in between. And now I'm on a mission to help 10,000 ADHDers build a life they deserve as an ADHD coach and educator. So let's get into the framework that you came here for today, which is the procrastination breaker framework. It works by aligning how you tackle projects and pieces of work with your interest-based nervous system. So let's get started. I say here, let's get started. Let's get into the cycle that we're breaking before we then attach a framework to it. The cycle we're breaking. The ADHD burnout cycle can always feel like it's there. It may not be visible to everybody else. So if we think about that swan analogy, and it can be excruciating if we don't have tools that allow us to break out of it. When we first start a project, we've got high energy and interest. We're super excited to get started, and that effort and that intensity and that energy can increase as we go into a discovery phase where we're finding more out about what we're trying to do. The motivation quite heavily drops when we have to do something. So when we deliver, when we're in that delivery phase, doing the actual work, this is where we get that low energy, low interest, and also the decreased productivity. We do end up regaining some momentum to deliver something, because even though we're stuck in this cycle of burnout and procrastination, we do tend to deliver the thing that we said we were going to do. However, it may not, but at what cost, I guess. And then we end up going into the new project, the new thing as part of the project, and the cycle continues. And this can happen at any point. And today we're focusing on a way to tap into a tool for when you feel your motivation dropping. So when you've got no framework, you're fighting yourself to regain that momentum. You know you need to deliver something, to create something, to make that thing happen. You're feeling distressed, frustrated, and overwhelmed. When you've got a framework, when we add the procrastination breaker framework at the beginning, when we're starting to feel that motivation dropping, you'll have something that you can tap into that has 4 simple steps. The framework enables you to tap into consistent motivation. Even if they're not explicit, there are many ways to prioritize pieces of work. We have, for example, the Eisenhower matrix, which talks about importance, urgency, ignoring things, delegating them. But these don't always work with an interest-based nervous system. In this workshop, we're going to tap into something that does work, especially when you're in that position where you're feeling very low motivation. And it can happen in many parts of our lives, especially when things are super boring. And we're going to focus on an example of when this happens during a project. So here are the 4 steps. We've got dopamine it. So this is finding things that give you dopamine. And a lot of this is about personalizing it to what's interesting to you. Breaking the thing down, clarifying expectations to get some feedback. And then my favorite part is to celebrate the progress that we're making. The framework itself is about reducing overwhelm. So we're tapping into our interest-based nervous system using the 4 things that enable us to stop procrastination. When we've got a whole project to do, it can feel so daunting. And in this example, we're going to break down how to create the project presentation. So already we're taking this super big thing into something that's slightly smaller, so it feels more manageable. And step number 1 is to dopamine it. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter and it plays a key role in motivation. For those with ADHD, stimulating dopamine production can help overcome that initial hurdle of starting the task. For example, here are a few ways to dopamine it. Number 1, listen to your favorite song. Whatever it is, use that song as your starting point. So you start to add that atomic version of a habit. So this Atomic Habits is a book and a process written by somebody called James Clear. If you haven't read the book, it's amazing. This first bit here, for example, listening to your favorite song. Also, you could gamify the task, tap into your own reward system, also some social interaction. It's important in order to make this step highly engaging, it needs to be personal. So the goal is stimulating enough to fuel your interest-based nervous system. For example, if we're creating a presentation for a project, for me, in order to dopamine this, I need to create something that's engaging. It needs to showcase our project's impact, using that word our. But when I'm working with a team, I love working with people. Therefore, the our is very important here. The impact that we are making, I want to use things that interest and excite me, like infographics and fun facts, and also adding a bit of urgency here by the end of the week. If you know that the end of the week is too long, you can also break the thing down so it's even smaller. So you've got smaller gates in between the big thing that you need to do and the smaller things. And this step is crucial. So breaking whatever you're doing down especially for those with ADHD who might feel overwhelmed by large and complex tasks. So here we're dividing the main goal into smaller, manageable tasks. Each small task should be clear and straightforward. This reduces complexity and it also makes the overall goal feel less daunting. The aim here is to simplify the journey that we're making each part of the task feel approachable and less overwhelming. For example, in the presentation example, I will, and also using language of I will break this task down into smaller things. And today's goal is to draft 5 slides for the presentation. I'm going to draft an introduction, who we are as a team, what we've done, why, and what's next. Step number 3 is around clarification. So this is ensuring that the mini task or sub goal that we're doing is understood, not just in terms of what needs to be done, but why it's important. For an ADHD leader, the why can serve as an additional layer of interest, making each task even more engaging. This step is about aligning the task with the bigger picture, ensuring there's clarity of purpose and a direct line of sight from the small thing that we're doing now towards the ultimate goal. Asking questions early of either yourself or a peer or a manager around clarification. So as an example of a presentation, could you clarify the target audience? Who's going to be seeing this presentation? Therefore, I can adjust my language accordingly. Bigger project goal. And the last, and to me, the most important step is celebration. Recognition and celebration are vital, especially for ADHD individuals who can benefit immensely from positive reinforcement. Acknowledging every small win and every milestone reached, celebrating progress keeps motivation high and it fuels the continued effort needed to reach that final goal. It's about creating a series of rewarding moments that maintain high levels of engagement and satisfaction throughout the journey. So, for example, in a non-ADHD aligned way, we're going to celebrate once the entire project is complete. For me, the entire project feels so far away that I often can't see or feel or be able to acknowledge when that's going to be. So doing something fun as soon as a milestone's finished, for example, taking the lineage here of after I've created those 5 slides, I'm going to try something I've never tried before. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to eat a piece of chocolate. I'm going to go for a dip in the sea. Whatever that thing is, something that you feel is a reward, a celebration for doing the thing, giving the satisfaction throughout the journey. So to recap, at each stage of the thing you're doing, in this example, we use creating a presentation. So number 1, at each stage, identify what fun, what dopamine, what interesting thing you need to keep going. For example, putting on your favorite song at the beginning of starting a task. At each stage, part number 2 is around breaking it down. So this is making each task as small as you possibly can. Step number 3 is at each stage, we're gathering further feedback to align expectations and making sure that the small things that we've broken down align to the larger thing of the project or the presentation that we're trying to create. And the 4th stage is around celebration. Sometimes we can get lost in just doing the work and the small bits of joy that we can give ourselves. And it's about giving ourselves permission to enjoy the pieces of work that we're doing or the celebration of, I've achieved that. Look at me. Look what I've done. I've done this with other people. I've done this for myself. This framework can work in any area. So whether or not it's how to get started on a presentation or a project, if you're preparing for a meeting, what you want to get out of networking, for example, how to approach starting a business, what does progression look like in your role, setting up a team building day. It can work anywhere. So a little bit, if you want to know a bit more about me, if you scan this barcode, you will be taken to my website. You'll be taken to Kind's website. And I'm just going to drop onto another slide. And I think Bo's going to come back. And Yeah, I'm going to hand you over to Bo, and then she's going to hand back over to me if anybody has any questions. So take the floor, Bo.
Beautiful circle. Alrighty. I mean, thank you so much, Gina, for those learnings. Really appreciate it. If any of y'all have any questions for her, you're welcome to write them in the Q&A or just pop them into the chat. We can monitor them there. And while you're thinking of your gorgeous questions, if you don't already have Tiimo Learn, you can download it with 30% off with the QR code on here. There's also going to be instructions in the email we'll send after, and that email is going to have the slides as well as a recording of our session today. So I hope you didn't frantically take notes. All of that is going to be in your inbox in a couple of hours. And yeah, does anyone have any questions for Gina / for the Tiimo team? Let's see. Is there a video showing how to use Tiimo effectively for ADHD users? Gorgeous question. Very good. I used to host starter sessions. There's a really good recording of that on our YouTube page, but we're also thinking of bringing those back in case you ever want to join one of those live sessions. Yeah, okay. Perfect. Okay, someone asked you, Gina, if there's any trainings with you because you're based in the UK. Yeah.
I am based in the UK. I'm also based remotely, so I work with people in the UK and also in Europe, depending on time zone. So yes, there's training. I work with organisations to help them understand that neurodiversity is a really powerful and important thing to have in a team. And I also work with individuals on a one-on-one basis, normally over a 12-week program, to help people fall in love and have more joy in their professional lives.
Next question. Do these strategies work for writing papers?
Oh, interesting. I think yes. So if we go back to the steps here, so if we're writing papers, taking that song example, so in order to write the paper, I don't know, the first starting point is to dopamine it. I know I've got to do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is put on my favorite song. I'm then going to writing a paper sounds like a really, really big thing to me. So how are we going to outline that paper? We need a start, a middle, and an end. We need an introduction. In the middle, there are 4 key points that I want to tackle. So each of those points are then broken down. In terms of the clarification, it can be an internal thing. Is this what I'm trying to say? It could be with a professor or a peer or something like that, gathering that feedback of this is where I've got to so far. What do you think? And the celebration part, again, I celebrate basically everything that I do. I give myself a pat on the head for almost everything I do because I feel like it really enforces that excitement and the drive that I need to continue doing things. So yes, the short answer is yes, I think it can work with writing papers.
And there's a question. I'm a bit nervous about telling my team I have ADHD. Any advice?
Yeah, I personally don't believe that we have to disclose our neurodiversity if we don't want to. So in terms of speaking to a team, I would start with telling one person that you are comfortable with speaking about, reaching out to maybe someone at the Tiimo team or dropping me a note of kind of how to talk that through. But also remembering that it's your choice to disclose and maybe adding what the purpose of the disclosure is. Are you looking for reasonable adjustments in the workplace? Are you looking to have more conversations about neurodiversity in the workplace? Think about the reason for you sharing that information, I would also add to, and then speaking to somebody that you trust first.
Then I find that the hardest thing is restarting a task after pausing it for some time. What are some tips you can give for overcoming this?
Absolutely. I think maybe we could start at the end here of the celebration bit of giving yourself a bit of a G up and I've got this far. So sometimes with ADHD brains, object permanence can be a massive thing, and object permanence isn't just about we've got, I don't know, I've bought a new textbook and I've stuffed it in the cupboard and then I've bought it 5 more times. Definitely done that myself. Object permanence can happen with so many different things. So bringing the celebration back into the beginning, the forefront of our minds, and then reverting back to the beginning of dopamining the thing that you're trying to do, the new starting point, breaking it down, clarifying what you're trying to achieve. And it can also be a self-clarification, some squiggles in a notepad of, is this what I'm trying to do? And then again, I'm a big fan of celebrating everything, however small the thing is.
And then any tips on how, when you break down steps, you can continue working on them after an unexpected interruption?
Oh, interesting. There are some online tools. For example, there's a really good Miro. It's called Miro. It's basically a big whiteboard, and you can add post-it notes. Also, I find ticking things off of a list can be really helpful. So I use Miro because of its simplicity. I chuck a load of post-it notes. I trust my own process of saying, here are all the things I want to do. I then put them into a now, later, and now, next, and later columns. And then when I've done them, I cross them off. So I can kind of see where I've got to in the breaking it down stage. So it gives me a sense of it gives me a sense of what I've achieved so far and what I've got left.
And then how do you speak to your family about your ADHD if they just take it as a joke?
Yeah, that can be super tough. I I think it depends on how much you want to speak about it with them, and thinking about what you want to get out of the conversation as well. So I would start with where you're at and what you want to speak to them about.
And then any tips to help recover from burnout?
Oh, I think burnout can be really different for different people. I think there is a lot of online resources that can help with it. For me, when I notice some of my burnout signs, I try and stop, and things that I find, being on a screen for a long period of time. So I try and remove screens for a little bit. And also burnout and the burnout cycles can be different for different people. I'm speaking from, personal, my my personal experience. I try and get into nature. I try and really regulate my breath when I'm feeling burnt out. None of this is a magic wand, but they are some of the things that I find really helpful. And also being kinder to myself and giving myself a bit of a hug of, it's going to be okay. I'm going to move forward at my own pace, at my own time, at my own speed.
And then do these strategies work for IT support agents, taking calls, filling out tickets, investigating, etc.?
Oh, yeah, I've worked on IT support and I understand all of the different things that are happening at all of the different stages of, I don't know, I completely get you and completely feel that. I think from a self-motivation point of view for me, is it possible to stick with one piece of work at a time? Is there a way of having a conversation with the people that you're working with around what are our skill sets? Where are we best placed within the kind of the types of work that we're doing? And also leaning on your co-workers a bit to say, this is where I really thrive, and see what happens. Again, none of this is all personal experience. It's not these aren't strategies that are going to work for everybody.
Then a really great question. Are there any tips for how to get out of the hole of procrastination when you're already feeling low?
Yeah, I understand. I think the self-kindness piece of giving yourself a bit of a hug of, I've got this. I'm going to move again at my own speed, at my own pace. And I was talking about presentations and things like that from a work point of view. These 4 steps can also be used for the only thing that I need to do today is make a cup of tea and have a shower. So I'm going to use these 4 steps to get me to a position where, I need to listen to my favorite song, for example, to get out of bed and make a cup of tea.
And then do you have any strategies to not overdo it? Sometimes I get very excited when I break things down and can just keep going because it feels so satisfying, and then I overdo it at the end.
Yeah, I get this one. Giving yourself some stopping gates as well, whether that's using something like the Pomodoro technique, which is a 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off type of thing. Also, when we're getting into the clarification stage, you could use that as a bit of an impulse gate of saying, I've got super excited, I want to do 15,000 things at the same time. I'm going to clarify either with myself or with a peer or with a manager of what's next. So you could use that as kind of a bit of an impulse gate as well.
And then why is it so hard for me to finish a task? How do I overcome this?
I think this framework could be something really useful to help overcome finishing tasks. So finding ways that you can dopamine something of things that you find really interesting, to break those things down, clarify what they are, and also celebrate when we've achieved things. These things don't need to be stereotypical major milestones. For me, sometimes it's, I've got out of bed and I've washed my hair. For example, the amount of spoons that it takes for me to wash my hair, it's taken me a really long time to realize that that can take up a morning for me, and that's okay.
Then my only question with dopamine it is, how do you stop yourself from getting distracted while putting on your favorite songs / making it fun? For example, when I can feel myself getting demotivated to do a task, I try and make it fun by playing around with fonts and design features, but I get too distracted, and before I know, it's been hours. God, yeah, I know this one.
Yep. Yeah, I get that. And I think it comes back to giving yourself some kind of impulse gates. And this is in the clarification stage, for example, whether that's after you've set yourself a half an hour timer or a 5 minute timer. 5 or 10 minute timers can be my favorite because it then brings up the challenging part. And after that 5 or 10 minutes of, okay, is this, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or do I need to, take stock and go back into and use also the exciting thing as a reward for doing the thing? So basically flipping it on its head. I'm going to finish the task I'm supposed to be doing, and as a reward, I'll play with the fonts or something like that. So it's gamifying the task that you're doing. And if something that you find really interesting, for example, like fonts, so this is where we get really hyperfixated, amazing. Use it as a reward for doing the thing that we were supposed to be doing.
How do you recommend dealing with the never-ending feedback loops with colleagues that lead you to feel like you can't get that final celebration and closure feeling?
Is this something that maybe you could give to yourself? So we start with the celebration of, I'm doing this thing, maybe reaching out to friends or to, I don't know, my celebration for finishing this presentation is I'm going to go for a walk. There's nobody else in this room with me. I'm giving myself that celebration gift. And if we start with that, sometimes our colleagues, sometimes I think we need to meet people at the level that they are at. And sometimes people don't want to celebrate things. But if we can give that gift to ourselves, going back to that self-compassion of, I'm going to do this for me, and this is what I feel the beauty in this celebration, and I'm going to do it for myself.
And do you have more examples of celebrating afterwards? I often start repeating unhealthy habits that aren't quite a celebration.
Yeah, so I things that I find, trying to think of a couple. I find being in nature a really big celebration for me, whether or not that's walking in some grass with my shoes off, whether that's sitting with myself and taking some deep breaths, whether that's making a cup of tea, I'm very British, or a cup of coffee, or or something like that. Um, or I don't know, I love drawing or I love scribbling down. So maybe that part of my day is spending some time scribbling some notes on a piece of paper. It could be starting with, going back to that break it down thing, starting with what things do bring you joy, and then you could use those post-it notes as a um, bringing the thing into your field of vision, of saying, these are the things that do bring me joy, so I want to do more of that.
And then how are you planning your day so that distractions don't take over your day?
I plan my days around my energy levels. So I will have days that are specifically for coaching clients. When I worked in a corporate role, I would spend I'd spend, I don't know, the first 30 minutes of my day planning what I thought I was supposed to be doing, sometimes leaving a bit of time to become distracted. Again, going back to that impulse gate of, if I'm going to allow myself to be distracted for 15 minutes, for 20 minutes, is setting myself a timer to kind of bring me back to, okay, I need to go back to the thing that I was doing. And in between those tasks of going out for a walk, of giving myself some form of low exercise to kind of come back to my energy state at that moment in time.
And then do you have any advice to waste less time scrolling on social media as an ADHDer?
Oh, delete the app. I go through phases of deleting Instagram, for example, and then coming back onto it, setting timers, replacing Instagram with something else. So replacing that time. Sometimes when we're looking for the dopamine in the social media, for saying going for reading can feel really, for me anyway, it can feel really difficult. So replacing it with spending time outside, spending time, I don't know, replacing it with something else can also be really helpful.
I will also say Screen Zen. Another Tiimo user recommended that to me, and it has like simply just changed my life. Highly recommend Screen Zen. Okay, but other question, how do you get out of bed to get to work in the morning when you're feeling unmotivated or overwhelmed?
I think that can be a really challenging position to be in, and sometimes it can take time, and it may be symptoms of something else. For me, being able to, going back to that self-kindness piece that I was talking about a little while ago, of, I'm enough, I have this, and if I've got the energy to make the first step, which is to get out of bed this morning, and that's what I'm going to do, taking it step by step.
And then what if you're in the space where you don't feel motivated to do anything, let alone finish a task, including getting out of bed? How can this or other frameworks be used to get through that?
Or similar to what I said just a second ago, is being kind to ourselves can sometimes be the most beautiful thing that we can do for ourselves in that moment.
And then what tips do you have for when you're not seeing awards or results immediately in sales, for instance, a need to persevere at that task in order to see results and celebrate the rewards?
Yeah, so finding things that are celebrations that maybe are unrelated to the task. So a celebration could be, again, after this presentation, I'm going to go for a walk because I like being outside. So I guess I keep referring back to things because for me, they're really important. So understanding what things are important to me and how I'm going to utilize them to celebrate things, because yeah, sales processes can be really long, and maybe the celebration is something that I find really interesting rather than the end goal. So this is again about breaking things down of, within a whole sales process, I don't know, from the point in time you're doing that business development to you're making a sale, there can be quite a lot of steps in between that. So finding ways of using your own interest-based nervous system to your advantage to find the beauty in the moment that you're in right now.
And there's a question, do you have any experience with adults who have ADHD and I'm going to say other overlapping neurodivergent profiles? In this case, they said Asperger's. And what's the difference between just like straight up ADHD profile and the overlapping ones? Yeah.
Yeah, great framing of question. I would say that we are all really different in the way that we approach things, and sometimes this is one tool in a wider toolkit of things that people can use. I think going back to, this is my favorite thing to be talking about this second, apparently, is self-kindness and finding ways that we find things interesting. So the way that I find my own dopamine may be different to the way you do, and that's absolutely okay. And to go back to, I'm doing this for me, because it's the beauty that I find in the thing that I'm doing, which again is different for everybody.
And then I have a hard time knowing how long something will take. Any advice for accurately breaking down a task so you can get it done in a reasonable amount of time?
Yeah, I think the breaking it down part here can be really helpful. So you kind of using time blindness and object permanence as an example, I can say that something's going to take 5 minutes, but actually it's going to take 5 hours. One of the things that I found really helpful is the visualization of what I'm supposed to be doing. So I don't know, I need to write a presentation. There are 500 things, whatever, there could be 5 things, it could be 500. These are hypothetical numbers. I need to do some of them now. I need to do some of them next. I need to do some of them later. And then I use a whole bunch of post-it notes to figure out. I let my brain just kind of run with it and go, these are all the things that I need to do. It gives me a bit of a visualization, and also thinking about estimates are just that, they're estimates. Estimates aren't always perfect. And I know sometimes in a corporate world, estimates and time can be really closely coupled. And having a relative example of how long something that was similar took as well can be really helpful. So when we're breaking things down, we can go, the last time I did a presentation like this, it took me 6 days. How, you know, setting yourself a challenge, how could I do it in 3 days or whatever? Having something that's relative, maybe asking a couple of questions to somebody else and breaking the thing down into small pieces and having a visualization of these are the types of things that I'm supposed to be doing can help.
Yes. I will also say I really like using AI for some of the stuff, and Tiimo actually does have an AI task and time breakdown function, which has really helped me for those tasks where I like simply don't have any idea how long it's going to take me. So that, or just like a chat GPT, a sense check is always really helpful too. Okay. How do you avoid overwhelm and stay organized when you're managing multiple projects that might have similar tasks but need to be organized as separate projects?
Yeah, I think going back to finding tools that work for you can be really helpful. Tools that I found really helpful for task organization are things like Tiimo can be really helpful in terms of specific task prioritization. There are things like Miro, which is one big whiteboard, which I find really helpful. CRM systems like Monday, which can also allow you to prioritize projects. If you've come across Jira, Jira is another project management tool. Trello, I'm going to stop because there's quite a lot of different tools that can be really, really helpful. I think being able to visualize these are the things that are different, and also interestingly that you've picked up on your pattern recognition, or these are some of the things that are the same across these projects. Maybe using some kind of color coordination or sticky notes or something like that to note that if you give yourself a bank of stuff that could be similar, and this is how I apply it to a project, you're giving yourself the gift of a template of I've done this before and I'm going to use this to my advantage to help me do it quicker next time.
And then how do you get over the thought of, I don't need to do this right now?
Can you keep that question so I can see it?
Sorry,
So
it went
that's
away.
okay. I think I can see them at the bottom. This, how can we, I can see it on the other thing.
Okay.
How can we avoid the thoughts of, I don't need to do this right now? I'm not sure I quite understand the question. I think that there are some things, it's a relativity process for me of does this thing need to be done right now? Maybe it does. Maybe it's one small thing that actually I don't necessarily need to do it now, but maybe it gives me enough dopamine to do something else. Or I write these things down so I know I've got something to look back on when I'm going, I've put this in a space, because else it goes into a object permanence doom cupboard where I never see it again. So using knowing for me that object permanence is a really big thing, bringing things into a visual process using something like Notion can be really helpful. So I can put all of the things that I want down into kind of different tabs or whatever, and then go, I'm not doing this now, and email notifications and calendar notifications can be really helpful. So I can remind myself, you need to look at this now. Or in 2 weeks' time, set myself a reminder to go back to the thing that I thought that I wanted to do.
And then if you post daily content on social media, then how do you take a break from social media if it affects, your job? Or yeah.
Posting content on social media, taking a break. Is there a way that you can maybe batch the content so you're using time and space to your advantage? So if you know you need to post every day, is there a way that you can use your hyper focus to create a whole bunch of content on a Monday or a Tuesday or whatever day suits you? And then it allows you to then take a step back. So we move a bit more into the proactive space than the reactive space of I need to create content every day, understand. But I'm giving myself the gift of not having to do that in the moment, and giving yourself impulse gates of I'm going to spend Tuesday, for example, creating some content. And do I really need to look at this right now?
And then Sean asked for the list of tools that you mentioned. So the Monday, Trello, Jira thing. Maybe we can send that out in the email after if you want to write them down. And then if you get distracted super quick, then what's the best way to get back to the task you're doing?
Oh, I think this can be really different for lots of different people. For me, going back to this framework can be really helpful of um, what thing is interesting to me. I'm going to use that to then finish the task that I'm supposed to be doing. Um, for example, I love cooking, so I'm going to give myself a reward of going to cook a meal after I finish the thing that I was supposed to be doing. Again, alarms can be really helpful, notifications can be really helpful. These are tools in a toolkit that can require some experimentation. So being playful with finding new ways that you respond well to. So we've talked about quite a few different tools today. Pick one, pick a framework. If this doesn't work, that's cool. How can you adapt it to something that you enjoy doing?
And then Leslie had a great idea for our next session together. Is it possible to get some kind of comparison between all the tools and applications? And they said that would be a great workshop. So time to whip that up. But okay, there was another question. How do you get making it to how English is hard today? How do you make getting to bed on time easier?
Yeah, again, I feel like I've said this a lot. It's different for different people. I find that having a bit of a routine can be really helpful, and that doesn't always mean that I say to myself, I'm going to go to bed at 9 o'clock every night, because sometimes that just doesn't work. Being a bit flexible of if you've ever been bowling before and you get those little gates or those barriers to say, if I go a little bit this way with the bowling ball, it's going to knock me a little bit to go into the lane that I need to be in. So things like putting your phone in a different space if you've got your alarm on, to kind of make it to, if one of the things that you do before you go to bed is scroll on your phone, is putting it out of reach. One of the things that I find is trying not to drink water after about 7 o'clock or maybe 8 o'clock. Again, this is personal to me. It's different for everybody. I find that having some kind of wind down routine can be really helpful. But the biggest thing for me is to stop looking at my phone past about 9 o'clock, because I'm trying to remove the blue light from going into my eyes, which keeps me interested and scrolling through social media really late. Again, it's different for different people, but some of the things that work for me.
And then our last question, how can you use the clarifying stage in a working environment when you have a lot of autonomy and it's difficult to get feedback from supervisors and coworkers?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things here. Could use the clarification step for yourself. If you could maybe use some chat GPT. If one of the things of using AI tools is to not put any personal information into the AI tool or company level information, because it is an algorithm and information that you put in is used to train a model. That's more of a asterisk here. But you could use it of, these are the 5 things that I'm doing. Given this kind of information, what would you suggest? It can sometimes be a way of bouncing some ideas off. Clarification with either co-workers or managers that are doing different things right now. Is there, I don't know the work situation you're in, or the corporate space or non-corporate space that you're in, of is there a way of asking one person if they can maybe body double with you, and it can be mutually beneficial for both parties, of this is something that I want to try. Using the term experimentation can also be really helpful sometimes when we're trying something new. Sometimes we get scared of new things. Completely normal, completely okay. If we use terminology like, I'm going to experiment, I'm going to try all this thing, whether or not it's to reach out to my coworker and say, hey, have you got time for a coffee? Or that doesn't work, maybe a few days later trying another way of approaching the same situation, of I need to speak to you about this specific thing, can also be helpful. Basically gamifying, trying to find the answer to the challenge that you're having.
Well, with that, thank you so much for answering all of our questions, Gina.
That
Really.
was a lot of questions, folks. Thank you so much. I hope I answered them to the best of my ability. If I had a lot of questions, thank you.
If there's one thing I know, is that the Tiimo community asks some really good questions every single time we have these kinds of sessions. So thank you all so much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure. Rest assured, we're going to have more sessions with Gina in the future. And we also have some other really exciting community events coming up. They're all free. You can find them in the app under the Learn tab. If you have any questions at all, you can always email me. If there's any questions for Gina, I can forward them to her. So feel free to reach out. I shared my email in the chat, but I'm going to share it for time. Let me do that. And then in a couple hours, once the Zoom video is done processing, I'll share the recording and all that stuff in an email as well. Thank you all so much for your time. I wish you a gorgeous rest of your day and hope to see you at our next event. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
folks. See you soon. Bye.